Hello and welcome to our show. I'm Irma Baker and I'm very pleased to have a guest here today who's going to talk about seniors and legal aid. We'll be back with our guest right after this message from our sponsor.
RSVP of Summit County has been making a difference in our community since 1972. RSVP volunteers are increasing the quality of life by participating in programs and organizations that provide important services to the community. RSVP matches personal interests and skills with opportunities to serve. If you're interested in adding more meaning to your life and improving the lives of others, please call 330-253-4597, extension 166.
Welcome back. Our guest today is James Koewler of the Koewler Law Office, and his office specializes in protecting seniors and people with special needs. And certainly, Jim, welcome to our show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Certainly, that is a big issue. Seniors are so often the victim of scams, of just the convoluted requirements and laws. And my gosh, I don't know how anybody keeps up with it, but I'm glad there are people like you who do.
Thank you very much.
So tell us, really, what are the main issues today that are facing seniors?
The main issues facing seniors today will be long-term care questions, long-term care costs perhaps. Sometimes it's scams and falling prey to people who would like to take their money, because today's seniors worked together to get us through the Great Depression and World War II and learn to trust each other. And unfortunately, the generations that have come after that aren't quite so trustworthy. So they like to feed on a senior's trust, or if seniors need to look out for their children or grandchildren, or a senior's fear of outliving their money. So they offer scams, sometimes by phone, sometimes by email, sometimes in person, to separate seniors and their money. Unfortunately, there's not a whole lot I can do about that except talk about prevention, which I try to do frequently, especially on the internet or on Facebook or LinkedIn. Do that a lot. Another one that I haven't found a way to help is gambling. Seniors do like casinos. I realize they're entertaining, but casinos are there to separate people and their money, and they're very good at it. You never see a casino that isn't particularly plush, do you?
No, they are beautiful temples to the slot machines and the card tables.
But the real focus of my practice is long-term care for seniors and long-term needs, not always care, long-term needs for people with special needs. Mm-hmm. For seniors, the cost of long-term care could wipe them out. Just take all of their life savings and it all goes out the door. And I realize for some people, that's where they have their life savings. That's maybe what they intend for it, which is fine. But for other seniors, that life savings is really their trophy. It's the medal that they won for running the marathon of their career, I like to say. Having that money outlive them gives them a sense of accomplishment, gives them a sense that their life here wasn't without meaning to someone. I mean, if you designed a building, you can always point at that building and say, I did that. If you wrote a piece of music, you could play it for someone and I did that. If you built Thunderbirds, your Thunderbirds that you built aren't around very much, and you certainly don't get to point at them because they're in somebody's garage being protected. So your life savings is your trophy. For people with special needs, they're never going to be able to earn a living themselves, or never be able to again earn a living themselves. And I say that because one very common type of person with special need is an autistic child. It could be an autistic adult, but at one time they were an autistic child as well. And if they're high functioning, not a problem. If they're low functioning, they may never be able to earn a living.
Well, you bring up a very good point there, because certainly with our viewers, our primary audience is people 50 and older, and what we have in our society today is the kind of, I don't know if it's unusual or not, but the problem of grandparents raising children, and some of those children do have special needs.
Yes.
And so where
entirely true.
Where do grandparents turn for the help with that?
Well, that's part of what I like to provide. There's no one answer for everybody. The developmentally disabled community is very strong, but it has been for years, and it built itself up to being strong. Every county in Ohio has a board of developmental disabilities. That wasn't here 50 years ago. So that community of parents and grandparents worked their way into that. So if you have a developmentally disabled child or grandchild, you can look to the Board of Developmental Disability in your county for a lot of help. You can also talk to other parents and grandparents because those communities tend to talk to each other. If you have an autistic child or autistic grandchild, that's a little tougher. They do tend to talk, especially the parents of autistic children. I assume the grandparents as well talk, but they aren't yet as organized or as developed as many community resources as the developmentally disabled community has.
Well, how does a law office fit into serving either seniors or people with special needs?
Well, the main thing we try to do is protect the money either of the person who needs long-term care or of the family of the developmentally disabled or autistic person, or it could be an accident victim that's now special needs. I could earn a living yesterday, and because I had a traumatic accident, I can't anymore. I will never be able to work again. Try to protect some of their money. Now, as part of that, I also like to surround them with help, surround them with people who can provide expertise over the long term. So let's talk about money first. If you need long-term care, as I mentioned, it will cost you your life savings if you're not careful. So there's some things we can do that are allowed under Medicaid and Veterans Benefits rules that you can set some money aside. It may be a trade-off. We can give some money away, but we have to give some up. I can't protect everything. But there are ways under those rules that people can protect their money from the cost of long-term care. What's the benefit of that? Well, first, let me mention why I talk about Medicaid and VA rules first. Somebody has to pay the bill for long-term care. Either the person's going to pay it, the family's going to pay it, or some outside source. The most common outside sources are the VA pension program, often called aid and attendance, and the Medicaid program, which is the biggest funder of long-term care everywhere. Almost 50%, maybe even more than 50% of all long-term care money comes from the Medicaid program. I keep saying Medicare, don't I? Medicaid program. Yes. From the Medicaid program. So qualifying for those programs is very important. Most people think you have to go broke first, which to some extent is true. But most people don't know that you can control how you go broke so that you can direct where the money goes. I like to set it aside, have someone hold it, either a trust or a family member, and that becomes the comfort fund. For example, Medicaid will buy you one hearing aid every 2 years. Well, let's say you need 2 hearing aids, and you're in a nursing home. In a nursing home, hearing aids, dentures, mail, cash, all disappear. So you may be down a hearing aid, you may be down 2. We could use that comfort fund that the person is holding to buy you another one, where if you were already broke, you weren't going to get one without some charitable support from someone or a family member paying. If that comfort fund outlives you and you pass them down to your children and grandchildren, great. If you don't, that's okay too, but at least you got more benefit out of your savings, out of your hard work for 40 or 50 years. And Medicaid and VA will not penalize you, or at least if you get help from an elder law attorney like me, you can make it so that you've planned for the penalty, that trade-off that I talked about. Save some, have to spend some. For people with special needs, we are sometimes protecting their money, like an accident victim, where they had a life savings or they got a lot of money in from say a lawsuit, like a birth malpractice. Well, you have a claim against the doctor if there's a birth malpractice. That money is going to come in and belong to the person with special needs, but they won't be able to get Medicaid coverage. They won't get supplemental security income, which for special needs people is their source of income, until that money's gone. Well, we can set it aside in a special needs trust, for example, that allows them to get the benefit, but also get extra things out of that trust. Someone can hold it for you, and it can buy things like a computer. If you are disabled, unable to work, but able to entertain yourself with a computer, great. But Social Security, the Supplemental Security Income Program, and Medicaid are never going to buy you a computer.
Well, you're talking about some things that are very important to quality of life. For instance, you mentioned a computer. Well, it's not necessarily to play games on,
No.
but to keep in touch with relatives. If you're housebound
Very much so.
due to an accident or some other disability of some kind, and you aren't able to do the traveling or the visiting that you had before, a computer with internet access is a great way to keep in touch with people and to keep that mind going strong.
Yes, very much so.
And I loved what you said before about people's savings being their trophy. And the fact that many people feel, well, my gosh, they're going to take my house.
Yeah.
What do you do?
Well, the house is something we try to protect. At the same time, we have to make the decision, and I don't get to make the decision, my client does. Is this house important to them as a house, or is the house important to them as the value, the money of the house? I describe it as a pile of money that happens to be in the shape of a house. If this is the 9th generation in the house and the 10th generation has to be there, then we're protecting the house. And at some point, a family member is going to have to buy it. If, however, we're just worried about how much money went into the house and not losing that money, we can do some things. First of all, if there's a spouse at home, Medicaid can't touch the house. They aren't going to. That spouse can't be thrown out. But if that spouse ever leaves, then Medicaid may come after the value. One of the things I like to do if there's a spouse at home is reverse mortgage the house so that the spouse can take money out of the house without having to make a monthly payment and can use that money during his or her lifetime. Can even give some of it away, probably not till after the Medicaid patient has passed away. But they can get some value out of the house that helps them and the family. At the same time, if there isn't a spouse at home, we just now consider it part of the money that I am protecting, and we end up selling it normally. But if it needs to stay in the family, then we're selling it to a family member.
Oh, it all depends on the person's circumstances and what they want to do. But I think the important thing you said is you can't protect everything,
No.
but you have to determine what can be protected and what has to be let go.
Yes. To some extent, we're playing Solomon and splitting the baby.
Not a happy situation for people who have lived and worked all their lives and are now facing these decisions.
No, and I don't mean to be flippant, but I can save some. Better to save some than save nothing. Without the help of someone that knows their way through these systems, almost no family can do it on their own.
It's hard to know. It's hard enough to know what to do in your day-to-day life without feeling like you should know what you can do in these extraordinary situations.
Exactly.
Well, let's talk about some other protection. What about people who have worked all their lives and they've got a 401k or they've got an IRA or something like that? How do these fit into all these decisions that have to be made?
Well, a 401k or an IRA or anything else that's tax deferred. It could be a 403b for a public employee. It might be the MyRA that President Obama recently announced if and when they ever gets rolled out. Those are tricky. First of all, if you hold on to it and then need long-term care, that pile of money is going to keep you from being eligible for Medicaid or VA benefits because it's going to make you too rich. You got to do something with it. Well, doing something with it means you have to pay the taxes all at once, okay? Because if you try to hold on to it, then you lose Medicaid eligibility and you may be paying for long-term care at $6,000 or $7,000 per month. Well, that generally outstrips the taxes. So we have to pay the taxes all at once. At the same time, even if you never need long-term care, people need to remember that an IRA, and I mean an IRA, 401k, it's all in one lump, but let's call them IRAs for the rest of the conversation just so we don't repeat ourselves. An IRA isn't for tax avoidance. Somebody somewhere is going to collect the tax at some point. An IRA is for tax timing. You get to choose when the tax is going to be paid. And because you, the owner of the IRA, get to choose, you can also choose to stretch it out over time. Now, many people are trying to stretch it out over the rest of their lifetimes. I think that's risky because if you retire at 65 or even 70 and start drawing out to pay your household expenses, your advanced age means you are that much closer to the risk of long-term care. that means you're that much closer to the risk of having to cash out the rest all at once and pay a big tax, peg tax bill on it. So I suggest to people that as soon as they retire, start drawing down big amounts, somewhere between cashing out over 3 and 10 years. It depends on the size of it. You got to decide that. To try to get it out of there, pay the taxes a little bit at a time. The key is to think of a few things that really going to make an impact. One, if you protect your IRA rather than the savings that's in the bank where the taxes have already been paid, well, spending that money doesn't really save you taxes because somebody's going to pay the tax on the IRA at some point. If you leave it to your kids, they're going to pay the tax at usually their rate, which is higher than yours, because they still have a regular income. If you have, if you're married, you get a bigger tax deduction, or I'm sorry, the tax rates, the tax brackets are spread out farther. So you want to draw out of it while you're still married, if you were married at the time you retired. But another key thing to think about is the federal tax rate. There's a 10% rate, so the first money that comes out at 10%. There's a 15% rate, so the next bunch of money comes out at 15%. And then the next tax bracket is 25%. That's a 10-point jump in the $40,000 to $50,000 range if you're single. Trying to keep as many dollars in the 10 and 15% rate by taking some out this year and taking some out next year and taking some out the year after that saves you that 10-point jump. It's the only huge jump in the tax brackets in the federal system. The only other jumps are at the most 5 points. So keeping things at 15% as many years as you can will save you a lot of tax money over the long term. If you hold on to it and never pay the taxes on it, fine, but your estate will or your children will.
One way or another, you're going to have to pay.
Somebody's going to pay taxes, and while the senior holds on to it till they die, didn't pay the taxes, it will cost their family more in tax money had they taken care of it while they were still alive and while they could stretch the taxes over many years.
And actually enjoyed the money that they had earned and saved over their careers to improve their own quality of life. What do you think is the biggest mistake that seniors make in managing their money?
I think the biggest mistake in managing your money is probably not managing the IRA all that well. Some seniors aren't particularly frugal. I can't say I'm particularly frugal. So I understand where that comes from. I'll have more money next week, so I got to get this now. But for most seniors, especially this generation, frugality is very common among them. So, and part of the frugality, I think, leads to not wanting to pay taxes. So I really think in big dollar amounts, the IRA is the biggest thing. What's second is probably not looking out for long-term care costs or not looking at that as a chance to do something. I will admit, what I do is weird. We give the money away in order to save it. Right there on his face. That sounds illogical, okay? But it's real. A lot of people think, can't do that, or if I didn't plan 5 years ago, there's nothing I can do now. That's entirely false. Even if you need long-term care now, a good elder law attorney can save a good chunk of it right now, even though you're having to pay bills right now.
You just brought up the 5-year rule. Want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Medicaid is required to look back 5 years and see if you gave money away. Okay, that can take many forms. You can give money directly to your kids. That's obviously a giveaway. You can buy a child's car for $6,000 when it's worth $2,000. Well, that's giving $4,000 away. You can buy a nice TV and then give that to a child or a grandchild. Those are all the same as giving money away. Medicaid, at least in my experience, has not yet penalized anybody for graduation gifts, for birthday gifts, or Christmas gifts. But they are looking for things where you made yourself intentionally poor and then sought Medicaid. Well, I'll admit, that's what I do, but I also plan ahead for what does that mean. We make the trade-off. But if you try to give everything away and then seek Medicaid without providing for that trade-off, you're never going to get covered. Medicaid is required to look back 5 years to see if you gave money away. If you gave away $20 million 5.5 years ago and sought Medicaid today, no problem. Medicaid would ignore it. If you sought Medicaid today and gave $1,000 away last week, or even 4.5 years ago, you'd have a problem. They wouldn't shut you off completely, but they just wouldn't cover you for the amount of time what you gave away would have covered. They simply say, we're not doing it, you should have, so for the first $1,000, you're on your own.
And that means kind of looking ahead and saying, well, where do I think I'm going to be 5 years from now?
It does. It does. Now, I'll admit to you, I am not in the pre-planning business, okay? Because if you want to pre-plan with a lawyer, we're taking all your money now and we're putting it somewhere where Medicaid's not going to count it. Well, while you're still healthy, very few people want to do that. And I can't say I blame them. So I really am in the crisis business. People who need care now or have a special need now that didn't before, or the family is just now realizing the special need. Special needs kind of crisis built in. And I help them, and that's what I do routinely. I have not yet had a plan ahead client, because if they want to plan ahead, they need to at least look at long-term care insurance first, because they don't have to give up their life savings. They just have to pay the insurance premiums. They're not low, but it's still cheaper than giving everything away.
Yeah, and that's where you need the help in figuring out what's going to be the best thing to do for your individual situation.
Exactly.
Well, it certainly is so much information, so much that people need to know to make the best decisions. And one of the things that you do is use social media very well to communicate with everyone. I mean, you don't have to be a client of yours to go to your website, to your blog, and find all this information. Mention a couple of the topics that you've covered recently on your blog.
Well, recently, as you brought up a few minutes ago, I had several talking about IRAs and how to cash them out effectively. I've also talked about the new health care law, the Affordable Care Act, and its impact on seniors. In fact, I'm giving a speech in a couple of days at the Cleveland Clinic on that very topic, the Affordable Care Act, Medicare and Medicaid, and how they are woven together.
Well, that brings up the point of Obamacare or Affordable Care Act. What's the best advice that you can give to seniors about that?
First, you get a free wellness visit. Keep that in mind. That while most of Obamacare did not reach those on Medicare, that did. Everyone gets a free wellness visit. You can get a mammogram, you can get a colonoscopy as well. So use it. To use it, you need to think ahead. You can't just say, oh, I should have taken that as my free visit. That's not going to happen. You need to call your doctor and say, I want my wellness visit or my free wellness visit. Make that clear to them. Because remember, you're not talking to the doctor, you're talking to the front desk that's got you and 3 other people on hold. Tell them you want your free wellness visit and get your blood pressure checked, talk about your medications, talk about how you're feeling. Yeah, we're going to be scolded for our blood pressure. I get scolded about my weight. Okay, that's okay. That's okay. That's the doctor's job. But if you're going to get your colonoscopy, for example, you need to think ahead. Ask the doctor, if you find something during the colonoscopy, what are we going to do? You're going to bring me out? Because remember, during a colonoscopy, you're asleep. You're going to take care of a polyp if you see it? Okay, there's going to be a bill for that, but you need to know in advance. But use your free visit. Now, in addition to that, there are some other things that the Affordable Care Act has brought about. They're kind of not in the basis of Obamacare, of who's paying for it, of the insurance portion. The Obamacare law created an I keep calling it affordable, an accountable care organization. That's kind of an HMO under Medicare, which is fine, which is great. My fear of these is that the care coordination and the fees are going to be controlled to the point that if you have a personal relationship with your doctor and the doctor leaves the practice, you are stuck with the accountable care organization. If you don't really have a doctor that you're tied to, you really like Dr. Smith, then that's not a problem. This organization will take care of you, coordination of care, looking over everything all at once. But if you're really tied to Dr. Smith, you may not want to do an accountable care organization, because if Dr. Smith leaves to go somewhere else, you want to be able to follow. That really is whether you have a personal relationship with your doctor or not. Some people do, some people don't, and that's fine.
Well, it's more than we can cover in one day or in one program. So I certainly hope that you'll come back and speak with us again. And I do want to encourage people to go to your website and take advantage of everything you have there. And I do want to thank you all for tuning in today and watching our program. Please do remember our sponsor, the Mature Services RSVP program, and have a wonderful day.
Since 1971, RSVP has been matching volunteers' talents to community needs. RSVP is affiliated with the Corporation for National and Community Service, a national organization that supports service and volunteering through grant-funded projects. Volunteers organize neighborhood watch programs, tutor children, renovate homes, plant community gardens, assist victims of natural disasters, and serve their communities in many other ways. RSVP offers maximum flexibility and choice to its volunteers as it matches the personal interests and skills of Americans 55 and older with opportunities to serve their communities. If you're interested in adding more meaning to your life and improving the lives of others, please call 330-253-4597, extension 166.
There's no place like home. Stay in your home with a 24-hour companion that doesn't need to be let outside, who isn't a grown adult reluctant to leave the nest, or a well-meaning neighbor who pops in every day. With Massillon Cable TV's MedAlert Personal Emergency Response System, you can stay home, have peace of mind, and your family will feel better too, knowing you have access to someone 24/7 should you need help. Keep your independence with Massillon Cable TV's MedAlert service. To learn more, call 330-833-4134. That's 833-4134. Or visit their website, MassillonCableTV.com.